Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new unit analysis and comparisons for the Generals of Múspell. Now that we have confirmation that this banner is here, it's time we do our pretty much weekly at this point analysis of the new units. First and foremost, as we always say, this is not a waifu comparison video. Do not be offended if I compare your favorite characters with previously notable Lilinas, Oscars, Setsunas, and now officially we're gonna see, in my opinion, the hottest guy compared with a pretty rugged man. But anyways, guys on Twitch, feel free to say hello to the friends on YouTube, and you guys on YouTube, you can say hello to the guys on Twitch. Welcome to the video, and hopefully you can take something out of it to make some better decisions in the world of Fire Emblem Heroes. So, today's start, we'll look at the new Green Axe infantry unit that was released, and his name is Helbindi. This time, I am actually going to look at every unit build on the unit themselves instead of keeping them blank, and compare them, as I always do, with a free-to-play or a 3 to 4 star option from the permanent pool. One thing I wanted to note right away before I compare any of these units is that all of the Generals of Múspell are unique in their own ways and are very difficult to compare with units in the permanent pool. This is not comparing like Summer Cordelia to like Oscar, for instance, which is just a matter of stats, but these guys actually have preference weapons that make them stand out significantly. So if you somehow end up plus 10ing these units, they are by far super unique units, and you know, for most banners that come out, this is a big astonishment for me. So of course, here's Helbindi, and I've compared him to you know, a guy that's pretty close to him in stat spread, but using the first generation of BST, and that's Hawkeye here. Now, the build I have on Helbindi is not well, it's fairly budget other than Steady Breath. Actually, most of it is base kit, but Steady Breath there is something similar to what I've used on my Crom set before. So if you guys have seen my Crom showcase in my other videos, it's pretty much the exact same build without healing. So for Helbindi to shine, he's gonna want some healing there. His Spectrum Wave weapon is a little bit inconsistent for himself and others. Like, playing on the odd turns is not super great, especially on like the arena where most of the battles, first engagements happen on the even turns. But even without that buff that he provides for all stats, it's kind of irrelevant because the stat spread's already pretty good, and all you're doing is giving yourself more of an advantage. One thing that I wanted to note though is that his weapon can actually mess things up when fighting against units that have Panic Ploy, and his HP isn't actually you know, on par with some of the armor units you might find with that sort of thing. Now, of course, you probably wouldn't even be using Steady Breath. You'd probably just keep the green dual infantry skill if you were going to use them as a support and scoring unit. But if you wanted to use them for arena assault or other content in the game, then Steady Breath with guard and quick riposte are pretty good. Or you could use Steady Breath with maybe renewal and quick riposte for, you know, types of maps where you don't have to worry about special acceleration on the enemy. And he's going to hit really hard, assuming you can get the right IV, which is the plus defense minus speed here. Now, I wanted to show the budget option to the left, which is Hawkeye. And Hawkeye is, well, he's pretty much very available. You're very likely to have something like a plus defense minus speed there. I've given him the Ardent Service weapon, which is the most likely most people have this and haven't foddered Grim Marth for it yet, but it is the best like free-to-play option as a support weapon. You'd likely give him green dual infantry in the A slot if you did end up plus 10ing Hawkeye. He's not going to score as much as Raven, Sorn, and Merrick, but he is notable as a choice there. Fortress Defense is kind of budget, and then the Chill Defense comes from like Walhart, for instance. So he's kind of like a support unit, but I didn't give him the green dual skill. You could obviously do that in the A slot. And of course, there's other things there. You probably give them like double rallies and Ether or Gale Force, so those are all things to consider. Now, even Defense Wave is the choice I've given there, assuming that, you know, maybe a month from now, Silas gets demoted and you might end up picking him up. It's definitely a good skill to consider for a support unit like him. Of course, subbing it out for Drive Defense is also a good alternative. But yeah, he's going to be able to kick some butt. Of course, you know, depending on how you use the unit, there's going to be a lot of flexibility in these builds. And that's important to realize from today's video, that there are a lot of build options for a lot of the characters I'm going to showcase. And these are just kind of like staple builds to kind of take and then work with. So supportive if you're going to use them in arena, or combat utility, whether you're going to use them in Arena Assault or GHBs or Chain Challenges or whatnot. Depends how you use them. But the thing is, and this is important to consider, is Hawkeye does have the merges, so his investment is feathers as opposed to orbs, and Helbindi is going to cost you a lot of orbs to get should you actually want to invest in him in the long term. So Hawkeye would actually outperform him should you invest feathers into him rather than Helbindi, and that's what we're going to take away. So Helbindi, great unit, great support unit. Yeah, that Spectrum Wave obviously is not going to compare to Ardent Service, which only buffs 4. But at least with Hawkeye, you can refine it, so he gets more HP and more defense, generally speaking, than Helbindi, so that's kind of a good thing to consider. Kind of more defense. I mean, Fortress Defense is a little bit of cheating here, but generally speaking, it's pretty good. Moving on. Laevatein. Okay, Laevatein is probably the most prominent Red Sword infantry that's been released in a long time. The last most notable unit that was released that was this strong was like Carla. And Carla definitely is really good, but one thing you have to consider with Carla, she was very squishy. She had very low bulk. The thing that makes Laevatein stand out compared to pretty much a lot of these other Red Sword infantry is the fact that she's the first unit to reach astoundingly high levels of attack. But the catch for that is, of course, you need a team comp that centers around that. For the most part, it's going to be pretty difficult to set up all this attack on her unless you kind of have double rallies and then you're giving up a turn by doing that, or you have a tactics team or wave skill. So there's some pretty high investment or kind of a construct for using Laevatein. You're going to have to kind of consider her in the right team comp. It's not the most difficult thing, and her base kit actually helps her get set up with trying to alleviate the amount of team comp creation you have to do, like the odd speed wave and the link skill. So what I've showcased here is a pretty simple build for that, which is just keeping most of her base kit, the link skill, Glimmer is added on to there, Heavy Blade and such, and she's going to be really easy to proc that. Of course, and the biggest thing, to consider, especially with Laevatein, is she has a huge weakness to something like Panic Ploy, instead of relying on like drive skills. She's not exactly the best support unit. In terms of support, she's only got Link skill and Speed Wave, and that's okay, but she is going to have by far the highest reachable attack stat for Red Sword infantry, and like I said, this banner is nuts, at least in that regard. And yeah, what I'm showing here is pretty much that, just straight up, not changing much, going for that one shot with some proper team comp creation. Now, for the budget option, in the 4-star pool actually, because Soleil isn't even in the 3-star, is Soleil herself. And what I'm showing there is the highest possible attack you can get out of a budget unit. So yeah, Silver Sword isn't exactly the most optimal choice. You'd probably be using something like Slaying Edge instead. But for a budget option that you want a Red Sword infantry smashing things as hard as they can, you pretty much have to go with like Attack, Refine, Silver Sword, Glimmer, Deathblow, Attack 3, Refine, and even something like Auto Attack Wave on Soleil. Like that's as close as you get in terms of comparing Laevatein. And the thing is, Laevatein with the team comp support is going to match that and beat that sort of comparison that I'm making. So like I said in the beginning, these units from this banner are definitely unique in their own right, and it's hard to do that comparison. But for those of you that wanted to look at it, yeah, Soleil with merges, if you already have one, can run something crazy like that, and she's going to need less support than what Laevatein will actually, because she's not relying on that team comp support. Deathblow 3, Attack 3, Silver Sword, Attack Refine. You're going for like a straight up one shot. Like Soleil can do that without relying on like the team buffs. So there it is. I'm going to showcase a little bit more flexibility in Laevatein's builds. I don't normally do this all the time, but whoops. There it is. Okay. So, of course, she is a blade instead of a blade mage. So, a blade is basically like a sword user, like a Fury Desperation user, but now in melee form. So, what works with blade mages? Yeah, your standard Fury Desperation. Realistically, that's what happens. But to run that properly, you're going to want to run higher speed, and you're going to have to really rely on something like Odd Speed Wave. So you take away the attack defense link that's on her base kit, replace it with Desperation, and you got yourself somebody who hits twice as hard instead of hitting just once for a huge hit. And this is something important to realize because she's actually not going to be able to one-shot some of the blue really tanky armors. For example, Brave Hector, or Hardin, or like Effie, right? Or Wendy, if you really see Wendy anymore. But those units can reach like 40 plus defense, and one hit from Laevatein just isn't going to match, even if you fully buff her. She's going to fail to kill those units. But if you're running Fury Desperation, and you can get 2 hits on those units, she will actually be able to kill those units. And that's why you would run something like this, especially considering Heavy Blade, the buffs that she reaches and such. Like, that is how you would secure those kills. So as an Arena Assault unit, something like this will be amazing and probably better than the attack defense link. It's such a small change too, pretty much changing one skill and you're good to go. It's crazy because these units really do work almost out of the box without changes. Okay, so this build is a little bit different from this build, which had Glimmer. And the reason you would run Draconic Aura over Heavy Blade is if you plan to take a hit back. So this is more flexible on the enemy phase rather than the player phase. So the one that was running Glimmer, and I'll swap through these ones, the one that's running Glimmer is like you don't expect to get hit as much. You can just pretty much go in and hit. And this build could run Life and Death, for instance, and just rely on one shot strictly through buffing. And you wouldn't really be charging Draconic Aura as nicely. While the other builds that I showcased over here with Draconic Aura can have some more enemy phase utility. Maybe if you attack through 2 hits, you charge the Draconic Aura, and then that gets you some pretty solid damage as well, which scales off of Laevatein's weapon. So yeah, it pretty much comes down to how you plan to use it. Glimmer and Draconic Aura are both going to be really solid choices. Glimmer scales really well off of high attack units, just compared to somebody like Lilina, while Draconic Aura, of course, scales really well off of high attack units as well, but it's unmitigated by high defense units. For example, a Glimmer that's scaling off of 60 attack into a 40 defense unit is only going to be 20 bonus damage, but 60 attack, you know, is then going to be about 20 damage as well with Draconic Aura, but it doesn't consider the attacks, the defense stat of the enemy. So that's kind of your comparison. When you're reaching over 60 attack and you got to consider how much defense or how much attack you're actually doing, then Glimmer might start out scaling Draconic Aura in most cases, but again, it depends whether the enemy's on a defense tile or not, and all these things to consider whether you're going to use her on enemy phase or player phase. Sorry, in hindsight, Glimmer doesn't add 20 extra damage. I think it's 10. It's 10 because the difference is 20. So sorry about that. 50% of 20 difference between 60 attack and 40 defense is 10. So Draconic Aura actually works better when the unit has that high defense stat. Yeah, it seemed a little odd to me, but finally, and honestly, between the 3 units, I actually consider Laevatein and Helbindi to work better as their own kind of standalone units, or requiring a little bit less, like okay, the difference between, to put it simply, between Laegjarn and Laevatein and Helbindi is that Helbindi and Laevatein are in your control, whether they'll succeed or not. But Laegjarn is less in control because her weapon, and for those who don't know, is reliant on enemy buffs. So Niu, I think that's the weapon, Niu, is kind of adding additional stats to her, 50% of what the enemy has. So for instance, if the enemy has, let's say, Rally Speed Defense plus 6 speed and 6 defense, that's 12 extra stats the enemy has. Laegjarn adds 6 stats to everything she has except HP, which is really good. But in those scenarios where the enemy doesn't use rallies, doesn't use buffs, or all the enemy units are dead and the enemy unit doesn't actually use a wave skill to buff herself, she falls off in that flexibility. So that becomes less in your control. She's pretty good as an Arena Assault unit because you can pretty much plan this sort of thing. You can say like, hey, you know, that enemy unit is running a bunch of buffs, and then you can use some pretty good game knowledge and gameplay to set up those buffs on her weapon, kind of like the same as Panic Ploy, really. You can set up Panic Ploys, you pretty much use her weapon in the same way. However, again, like, you have less control here, and especially if there's like one enemy left, you lose a lot of value on her weapon. You can pretty much sub it out for a lot of other cool things though, because her stat spread is amazing. You can run like Slaying Edge Gale Force, you can run Fire Sweep on her. She's got like crazy stat spread for other weapons as well if you want to consider. But if you want to keep her base kit pretty standard, there's something like this which kind of does that. I've compared her to another unit in the 3 and 4 star pool, which is Cheetah in this case. And what I've chosen with Cheetah is similar to what I talked about in my dual meta preparing yourself for the arena, which was a couple of days back or about a week ago. So I talked about how Cheetah is going to be supportive. Well, of course, if you take the dual flying skill from her and you do something crazy like what I've shown on the left there, she's going to be one of the best users to run something like that, like chill attack, which comes off of Laegjarn, the defense ploy, the speed ploy, dual flying skills, Katamatsu. So a really high invested Cheetah is going to obviously be more supportive than Laegjarn. Of course, you could keep Wing Sword and run like sweep builds as well with Poison Strike. I've showcased this as well. So generally speaking, Laegjarn is hard to compare to because her stat spread's so unique. And somebody else that I would actually choose as well would be like Pala. And NY Camille in the 5-star exclusive, but Laegjarn's stat spread is really good if you want to create some build flexibility. Okay, and so what you saw there was a Fury Desperation build with guidance, really good for Arena Assault where you can set that up. If you're planning to try something more unique, I've chosen something like this to take advantage of her pretty good stats in everything except res, so you can make her really tanky on the enemy phase because her defense is really good, and you don't have to rely on something like quick riposte to get those doubles off. So her defense is at 36, consider close defense at 42, and if you're in brazen range it's up to 49, which is really good. You can pretty much go in and hit something on player phase, get yourself into vantage brazen range, and then go for some really strong hits. Like, just consider the situation: if you're faster than the enemy, you get 3 engagements, you double an enemy, you hit them, they hit you back, you hit them again, bonfire is charged, vantage ready, brazen attack, defense, and you're hitting for over 50, about 40 to 50 damage easily on most units, and it should get the kill, and Savage Bro really secures those kills. So this is kind of something, again, fairly budget, but kind of different there. The reason it's plus speed rather than plus defense is so you can really set up that bonfire nuke really well. So all in all, to be honest with you guys, these units are really good, and I hope I've kind of given you some staple ideas or maybe some things you can work with them. There's a lot more you can do with them, and honestly, if you have something that you want to show off, just tell me your build ideas in the comments below. Don't take these builds too seriously because I really wanted to just showcase and tell you that these units are actually a lot better than a lot of units that have been released lately, so I'm genuinely more impressed. Let's actually move on though and look at the mathematics. Here's the math behind this banner. And actually a big shocker for those of you that make it to this part of the video, this banner is worth pulling for. It's not worth pulling for on day 1 though, and I'll talk about that in a moment. However, it could be worth pulling on day 1, and here's why. So, day 1 pulls are justifiable if you're going for the skills rather than the units. I'm talking specifically about the green dual and red flying dual skills, green infantry dual. If you're bordering in the arena and you care about your competitive rank, these skills are worth getting for your plus 10 Sorens, plus 10 Ravens, some plus 10 Merrics, whoever, your Cheetahs and Palas, whatever you have, to give yourself an edge in that arena to get yourself up a rank or stay in tier 21. Super crucial for that. If you're hovering, borderline, or think you can move up a rank because of these skills, then it is definitely worth pulling day 1 to give yourself that edge. You have to know it though. You might have to be waiting a few days and see whether that's the case. When it comes to dual skills, surely they're a really good idea to pull for. Now, although to consider, if you're not pulling for the skills right away, a legendary banner is coming up, and that legendary banner is going to have Lecter returning, legendary Ike, F Grima, and a new hero as well. So I've talked about that in my predictions video a couple days back. But yeah, that banner could be huge. There could be some really good units on there. We could be getting Takumi and Cuddleless. Of course, you could get like male Grima finally, Vengeful Fighter. Lecter has this encounter. Legendary Ike is a highly desired unit with Warding Breath. Like, there's going to be some good quality stuff there. So you might want to see what's coming up there before you spend your orbs here, if you haven't already. And finally, this banner is a whole month long, so it's going to overlap with a new update. It's going to overlap with the banner in October. You can make yourself some good decisions between all that. So, of course, pulling day 1, if you're not giving yourself a competitive edge, is still not going to be worth it. Now, once all the banners have arrived, the legendary banner has passed, and we've seen what's to come in October. The reason this banner is still worth pulling for, even if you're not going for the dual skills and you're just going for skills specifically, is because it's a 3-person focus banner. All the units have really good fodder options, and the units themselves are genuinely pretty good. So if you look at the math here, And I've shown for specific units, let's look at red as the example first. If you're targeting a specific red unit on this banner, it's going to cost you 143 orbs on average. The 90th percentile is about 323, so that's not too great. And the median's 103, so that means 1 in 2 people basically spend about 103 orbs to get a specific keyword, specific red hero on this banner. So it's Laegjarn or Layva Teen. But one thing to really consider here is because the red pool is so saturated, when 2 colors are shared, 2 units are sharing a color, you can get the other one while targeting this one. So this is a big myth, but basically cut all these numbers in half. For example, the average, 143, if you cut it in half to 71.5, 71 orbs basically, you will get either Laegjarn or Layva Teen while targeting one. So you'll be picking up some really good fodder, like attack defense link, for instance, or odd speed wave, or in the case of the reverse, you're picking up red dual flying, or you're you know, they're just really good options. Like, besides red dual flying, I actually forgot what Laegjarn comes with. But again, she's pretty good stuff there as well. So this is good value, at least for red, and it hasn't had good value on a banner for a long time. Finally, as we all know, green is the best pool to pull from if you're targeting specific focus units. So if you don't see reds, you pull for green. And greens, they have those like really low cost to get a focus unit. Plus, if you're adding merges to your units like Soren, Merrick, or Raven, this would be time for it. You'll probably see a lot of copies as you pull for that. So 112 orbs, median, you know, pretty good first pull chance. These are all things on a 3-person focus banner where they're sharing color. It's really good. This is about as optimal as it gets for value on a 3-person focus banner. So if you're not sure yet, maybe in a few weeks, you might want to delve into this and pick up something like Infantry Pulse from Helbindi. And, you know, that's going to be a good choice. Or the green dual infantry. I think it was Chill Attack on Laegjarn. That's the one it was. So, good value banner. Still would be exercising patience here. But again, if you're bordering, go for it. Okay, guys? I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching today. If you loved the video, if you love me, you can do one of these for me. Thank you. Thumbs up. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Love you guys. Peace.